But you were born into this world in order to discover this world. This is your homeland. You're not a foreigner. You may think you are and feel it at times, but you're not. But this world is so vast, and you have such curiosity. How can you possibly conceive of getting to know this whole world? Even the slightest thing about nature can suddenly fascinate you. Whether it's the dropping of a nut from a tree, the flickering of a black butterfly. I saw one today. Black. Wow. And it fascinates you. You might ask yourself, why? Why am I fascinated by something that, in a sense, is so insignificant in my life? It was a passing fancy. But yet we remember that. And in the act of remembering that, there's a certain sense of joy. We're not overwhelmed, but it's truly there. And then you go and celebrate your children or your grandchildren's birthdays. Or you go out and have a picnic. Or you go out to the lake. And there you forget about time, hopefully some of your worries. And there is a interesting enjoyment in the presence of people you love and who love you. Again, it's spontaneous, it's not forced, it's not reasoned to, it doesn't violate reason. It moves you. You feel better for it. You're glad you had that vacation, those few moments. You can recall them in memory, thank God. Then you think, wait a minute. That episode is no longer there, but yet I can remember it and even bring up the emotion. Just think. You carry everything you've experienced with you. Wow. Good or bad, boring or thrilling. So you got more and more curious one day. You said, I'd like to get to the source of this enjoyment. I want to get to the source of knowing what's going on out there in nature, in the universe. Is it possible for me to increase my perception of things, my sensory awareness? One day somebody taps you on the shoulder and says, you really want to learn all about that stuff? You say, how does he know? He says, come follow me. And he leads you to a cave that's over 5,000 years old. Truly. And again, you're in a sense of wow. Wow is short for wonder. And he says, welcome. And he introduces you to some of his fellow compatriots. And he said, would you like to stay a few days? And we'll tell you about yourself and ourselves. Now they've got your curiosity. He said, okay. Don't worry about meals. You'll have lunch once a day, but you can have the chai all day long. Except you can't have mochas. It's not at all allowed here. You're not advanced enough. So you stay a few days. One or two of the monks come by and said, come on, we got to get you going. We know you're interested in life in a deep way. How do you know that? We can tell by just the way you are. Oh, okay. You think, how do they know that? So we want to show you how to advance it. Interested? Of course I am. Fine. Now, the first lesson is how to breathe properly. Really? Yeah, I know how to breathe. Do you? Yeah, I know. But we're going to tell you how to advance it. You see, what you know right now is what everybody else knows. And that's where everybody else is. But you said you want to advance? Well, you've got to change something in yourself to enable yourself to advance beyond your borders. Oh. And one of those clues is how to breathe properly. Oh, I see. Besides, you can't have hot dogs anymore either, or hamburgers. You've got to improve your diet so we don't have to give you probiotics for the rest of your life. All right. So you're going to become a vegetarian. Really? Yep. But you'll get used to it. You'll have sabzi, rice, and dal forever. With kheer and gulab jamun occasionally. Okay. Get my point? Everybody's in a sense a certain level. And you know, you're not that way. You people, my friends, my students, I've known you for years. I've watched you carefully. Haha, you didn't think so, but I did. I do. You're just like my charming friend that I pulled out of the air. Huh? So let's go back to him. He learns how to breathe. Then he learns how to stretch his body so that he keeps the body fit. You don't have to be muscular. We're not making you for the Yoga Olympics. We're just going to get you in good tonality. That's what it's all about. Because we're going to teach you how to slow down the aging process. Ooh. We have other surprises, but that's later. This is how our tradition started. People began to question spontaneously the mystery of life. By mystery, as I always say, I don't mean something you don't know. I mean that something so rich, you have to keep delving into it to get the deeper levels of its truth. Look how often when you started a job, you didn't know what you were doing. Dan Stasiak worked for IBM. Now he works for Qualcomm. But he told me it took a year to get used to their ways of doing things. What they expected of him, what were the issues that he felt he had the intelligent capacity and skill in, a whole year. The point is, when he started, it was a mystery, and then he began to explore that mystery. And gradually he understood it. That's what you're doing now. We are all exploring the mystery of life. And our basic tool is twofold, not just one. Something up here and something here. Very important. Because you have to fall in love with that mystery. One day, Swamiji was going to New York. We were in Honesdale, and we all came out to say goodbye. And I was just standing in the center, and the car pulled up from the side in front so he could wave goodbye to us. And we were about from here to that door. And he rolled down the window, and he looked directly at me and said, "Oh, well." So I walked over. And I looked at him like this. He was about 4 feet from me. He said, "Justin, yeah, love life." He rolled back over. Do you know how often that has stood out for me? He summed it up at that moment in my life when I needed it, and that would send me on further. But not to forget it, but to come take it with me. So the heart and the mind have to be partners in our tradition. We go for the truth, and we learn to love life. The two conflate. Very important. Don't worry about service. I worry about people who push that first, because then I think they're not as full of integrity as they think they are. What you want to go for is discerning the truth and responding to it appropriately. We call that the virtue of prudence. Very important. Prudence must be there. Service can come from behind, but prudence has to lead. To do the right thing at the right time, in the right way, in the right amount. That takes skill and a lot of mistakes. It's like you don't really learn to raise your kid until you had the third one. Right? She just had her third one. You want? Why? It's that give and take. You go to Swamiji's cave, he used to tell me stories. The new monks would come in, the new guys who were about to become monks. And they'd be making all kinds of mistakes in their breathing, and the guys in the next cell said, "Go shut him up, will you? Disturbing my meditation." And finally, they got it. But we all do, huh? How strange. Here is a cave monastery that is not religious, not mythological, but there's mythological stories about it. Shangri-La is one of them. These are monks devoted to the mystery of life. Seriously. That's all Swamiji did. His master kept giving him new practices. Discover that and then tell me what it was all about. Notice what he said, tell me then. Because in our tradition, we don't salute. Nothing's on faith. You prove it or get out. We want the authority of the truth to come from your experience so that you can elaborate it and explain it and repeat it. Because why? Then you know you really have it. That's what yoga means. It's a union with life. It's a loving union. And it's something you have not only aspired to, but you have wooed and won. Now here's a surprise that comes. As you well know to some extent already, some of you, as you get more and more centered in yourself, and by centered I mean you're devoted to truth, prudence, you have a non-aggressive approach to life, but you know how to use aggression when you have to. That's being prudent. So within basically what's happening, and there's a ripening, I love that word, there's a ripening to balanced, tranquil living. Always ready to move on an instant because you're unobtrusively aware of what's going on with a critical eye. And because you are, nature starts to trust you. What's the evidence for that? You'll take a walk in the forest and you'll start to notice things that were always there but you never picked up before. You're becoming more receptive. I remember a couple of years ago out at Koinonia, I went walking with Andy. Not you. The more intelligent one next time. I was fascinated as he would explain to me what was going on in that little world down there, because I was always looking up here. Then I could combine both worlds because they belong together, huh? Different realms, different domains. That's what's meant to happen to you. You almost become caught up in a state of wonder. But we don't want to get you too wondering. Because one day when Teresa Devi said to Swamiji, I want you to bring me to the state of self-realization. Illuminate me. He says, I can't. She said, why not? He said, I'd never get any work out of you. So that's why I can't push you people too much. Hey, our tradition emphasizes a humane approach. There's nothing rigid. It's because you want to. When they see that, and that desire is there, coming from here, not just an intellectual experience. That's not. You'll never get very far in our tradition. It's got to come from here up through here. Then they say, aha, we got a live one. Let's work with her. It's still going on right now. There are about 12 monks over there. What are they doing? They're exploring what I would call the human frontier and the universe at large. Those two together. And they take down all their experiments where they made mistakes, what worked, and occasionally they will send somebody, actual person, who'll come out and go to the West, get all the credentials so he'd be accepted by the scientific community as well as being socially accepted by the government, and he'll start the lecture. But in the meantime, don't worry, you're not orphans. They speak to you in your meditation, and I'm serious about that. Now, how do they speak? You got to learn their language. You want to know what their language is? S-I-L-E-N-C-E. That's the paradox. When you're quiet in your meditation, the whispers will come in to your mind. And you'll discover that in the way life is starting to work out. The insights will start to come. Aha, will be there. Gifts will start to come to you unexpectedly. Luncheon engagements, chai invitations, all kinds of superlative things will walk into your life. Seriously. You'll learn to be more perceptive and dedicated, as well as acutely aware of your duties, we'll call them that, at work, at home. But you'll do it also from here. This is important. Not everything can be done from here, so that's fine. A lot of things is just, you got to just do it. Okay. Don't worry about falling in love with it. It's not necessary. What's the goal of our tradition? They want you to enjoy life unlimitedly. Notice the term I use, unlimitedly. Now, most people say, you're crazy. You can have a good time now at the parties. I know. Those are hints. Those are crude clues. But you know what it's like, say, to be in the arms of someone you love. To be in the quietness some night, walking under the stars. There are moments that transcend the workaday world, all your concerns. Something really moves in you. That can become permanently your nature, because that's where you're headed. That is your nature, but you've got to rediscover it, in a sense. Now, if you don't mind, I'd like to read a little something about Swami Rama. Unless we pierce through the data to the cause behind these new landmarks in human excellence, its subject will remain simply a glittering episode for the archives of biofeedback. One has to look beyond what the scientists label the hardcore physical data of Swami Rama's experiments, the thermistor readings, the printed brainwave patterns, the blood pressure calculations, the heart rate recordings, the x-rays of rooms through waxed eyes. Amazing as they are. The data, including undisclosed experiments that Menninger will hopefully reveal one day, is indisputable. My point is that the profundity of what he did erodes if we only admire his past presence by these recorded measurements. Swami Rama's sole endeavor was to awaken us to what we could be, not to comfort us as we are. He redefined the somber tones of holiness and freshened them with a panache that defied categorization. He wanted his students to be decisive about life and not resort to sanctimonious excuses whenever struggles became apparent. Over the years, I have found that we don't need dark reminders of our plight. We need the scintillating vigor and beauty of our unimagined destiny, which that sage made so palpable in his own person. The charm, the joy, the wisdom that thousands saw in his freedom mirrored our own, even when we were too dim to recognize it. How about that? When first hearing this awesome statement, this is the one that has moved me for years. The entire body is within the mind, but the mind is not completely within the body. Oh boy. I felt cheered in my own speculation about the colossal frontiers of human consciousness in contrast to the orthodox limitations of the human mind that I had learned in modern philosophical and theological writings. The statement flashed in my mind as a summary principle that illumined much more than his scientific career. It was a postulate of awareness that formed the basis for all the other experiments of his life. This radical clarification of the relationship between human consciousness and its body provoked fruitful inquiries that scientific research until now had neglected to pursue. As Swami often would say, after learning comes practice, then assimilation, then illumination. It's an utterly simple methodology that rings evidently true as we learn firsthand by placing ourselves in the dynamics of living, life itself. It became patent to me that the ancient practice of uniting oneself to life in body, mind, and spirit promoted an expansion of self-awareness that redefined one in those terms that characterize so much of Swamiji's encouragement to us. I've done it, he would exclaim, you can too. Nothing. To Swamiji, life itself opened its fountainhead of truth for what he called para vidya, the transcendental knowledge that enlivens one's entire being. He winked at us with its message, beckoning us to follow, and not everybody winked back. Swamiji never downgraded the rational side of the mind. He wanted us to probe continuously with it until we bumped into its borders and realized that our genuine questions about life were still unanswered. He hoped that we would contend with the paradox that reason raised questions that it could not answer. Perhaps, he would tease, your reasonable questions have originated from another unknown portion of your mind. What is it? What's that all about? Okay. He's shown that yoga, the ancient science, and some of the Himalayan tradition of which he was trained in and grew up in, could be examined and vindicated within the domain of current scientific rationalism. The laboratory technology could substantiate his empirical claims for yoga. And the accumulation of his laboratory experiments demonstrated its scientific verification. Yet, the challenge loomed. The conventional medical physical model of scientific reasoning could not explain fully the data he presented. While he was in Kansas, delivering his lectures there in the city, more than twice a young mother tried to make an appointment with him before or after his lectures, but to no avail. After his final session in Kansas auditorium one evening, she took a chance, and after the audience departed, she just waited alone in the corridor as the minutes ticked by. Soon afterwards, Swamiji came striding out the main door and saw her sitting anxiously on the bench. The woman stood up in tense hesitation, which did not go unnoticed. Swamiji excused himself from the Menninger's staff, who wanted to protect him, and smilingly asked the frantic mother to sit down next to him. She clumsily apologized for her boldness, while he assured her that everything was fine. Of course he would listen to her story. The problem was with her little son's severe asthma and intense wheezing. Sometimes he became blue during the night, fighting to get air. Swamiji slowly nodded his head as she spoke. He looked at her keenly in silence and then softly told her that the issue was the boy's heart. A cardiologist must check the boy with an EKG immediately. Without mentioning her encounter with the visiting yogi, the woman followed his suggestion without telling her family physician. A strong malfunction was discovered in his heart, but the cardiologist said it was repairable. The family physician was very upset at the woman seeking out this foreigner for consultation, but the woman was pleased to accept the scolding since the boy's health improved greatly since meeting that foreigner. Later, when asked, Swamiji explained that he had called to the boy in his mind during his silence before the woman. The lad made contact in his astral body and explained that he came to this life with a defective heart so that his parents could help him get it repaired. It was great. Swami Rama's performance in the laboratory derived from a much broader spectrum of consciousness than reason could affect, no doubt. During his experiments, he redefined human nature before the eyes of these researchers, all with their PhDs and MDs. But they refused to run with it. He proved that the cosmos has intelligible dimensions that are off limits to unaided reason. And of course, that made him suspect among many scientists. Up until the 70s, medicine did not believe that most of the systems of the body communicated with each other. With the startling advances in the mind of body-mind medicine, it became apparent that mind and metabolism are not strangers but intimate companions. Now, in deliberations about the data of his experiments, some people can even refuse to accept the evidence. When Jacques Monod, the Nobel laureate in biology, was asked how he could arrive at the startling conviction that the universe and humankind were ultimately the products of chance, he told his interviewers that in his research and methodology, he carefully avoided any evidence that indicated the presence of order, design, or purpose. There. I'm right. Get away from me with that evidence. You got a Nobel for that. That's why I don't admire Sweden anymore for that one point. Swamiji found out the hard way that those attitudinal impedances existed among many educated adults who refused to acknowledge the truth of his activities even when they witnessed them. Why? Well, the self-regulated control of his person, his seeming ability to bypass the prevailing universal laws of physics, simply could not happen in their worldview. And the root issue for them was neither objectivity nor truth, but, I believe, the contravention of their personal agendas. I'm falling in love with my own credentials. This is what they stand for. Rather than broaden, adjust, or amend the way of viewing life, their inflated ego prefers to outlaw the messenger. Swami used to say, you can't persuade people to stop being foolish. You can only train them out of it. I love that. And he wasn't talking about ordinary people when he said that. Oh, he would become so excited in assisting someone to explore their nature that he couldn't help but extend his encouragement in delightfully unorthodox displays. Yep. One afternoon, this is going to bring it right home to you people, in the 70s, an enthusiastic physician, whom I know, met his long-awaited appointment with the yoga master at the Minneapolis Holiday Inn, which still exists. As Swamiji helped him off with his winter coat, the visitor suddenly stopped his motion, and a frustrated look appeared on his face. Is there a difficulty? Swamiji looked puzzled. I've forgotten the microphone for my recorder, and now I'll have to drive back home to retrieve it, the physician replied, annoyed at his foolishness. Well, concerned for the man's time, while admiring his willingness to drive back across the city on a snowy afternoon, Swamiji asked him, wait a minute, where did you leave the speaker exactly? In my bedroom. Where is your bedroom located? On the second floor next to the stairs. Okay. And where is the microphone in your bedroom? The physician paused to remember and then replied, it's on the top of the dresser next to the south window. He was just about to ask about his host's interests while buttoning his coat, and Swamiji smoothly moved his right hand from behind his back and asked with a slight triumphal smile, is this it? Ooh. Here we go. The physician stared wildly at the small microphone held out to him, looked up at Swamiji, then back down to the speaker. And with a sigh, he slowly continued putting on his coat while weakly uttering, I can't take this. I can't. And he departed. I loved it when he used to do that in front of me. Give me more. Show me how you did that. Oh, so accepting Swami Rama's gift of life proved too much reality for the physician's worldview. Swamiji's concern cost him the man's presence, but that man will never forget the incident. As I realized how difficult it is to stand before a revelation of reality that neither occurs nor is comprehensible within one's conventional worldview, my sympathies heart broadened over the years. I discovered that training people to enlarge their worldview takes incredibly patient resources. I'll say. You can't force people to awaken, Swamiji would insist. They must desire it. Whoa. Now, coming to a close. Swami's mind was essentially no different than yours or mine, except that his thoughts and actions arose from a transcendental magnitude of awareness, a depth of enlivening power that transfused every level of his being. There was nothing timid about this man or his demeanor. He drew upon his immortality, not by belief as we do, but through the experience of its energy. He was privy to the universal life force that supports every being in the cosmos. I don't speak here of an alteration in attitude. It's not a matter of changing one's mental viewpoint. But we have to access the princely power from which our ideas, images, attitudes, and everything under the sun derives. We're not moving furniture around. If we want to immigrate to the celestial realms and enjoy the liberties where the sages roam, then rational endeavors are not shortcuts. Swami used to say, we doubt because we don't see the whole. We need to expand the capacity to see things fully as they are. More and more, we have to increase our love for direct experience. That's why you're in the tradition, I hope. I'm hungry. I don't know about you. Any questions? Reduced you to silence, huh? Any questions about the tradition? Yes, ma'am.
Well, you mentioned there were 12 monks in the cave.
Yeah.
And another time you said each one of them, they're assigned to us. One of them.
Shh. There may be others.
Can you elaborate?
When you are initiated, you didn't choose the tradition, it chose you. I know that sounds wild, but that's true. They've had their eye on you since birth. Can you imagine that? All you goofy people, they've had their eye on you since birth. They waited for the right time. You had to go through your own trials and advances, and finally, something caught your imagination. Swamiji didn't make many swamis or initiators when he came. I was the first person in the West that he assigned meditation to from his tradition. I was shocked. And he gave it to me the day he initiated me. And the day he initiated me, he taught me meditation. All at once, boom, 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 right there. He says, now I want you to go out and you represent the tradition. I haven't given it to anybody, not even Dr. Arya. I said, who's Dr. Arya? I said, okay. So I began to teach at Loyola University. And one day each semester, in all my classes, I would say, put your books aside. Let me tell you something about yourself. And that's when I talk about the philosophy of loving life. Tell them about their mind-body experience, because I knew all about Swamiji's experiments. I had them, I went over them again and again by that time. I met him in 72, and he did his experiments back in 70. And they're already written up. Now, my point is this. He told me one day, you didn't choose us, we chose you. We've been waiting for you. You took a long time, Justin. Okay, so, but I'm finally there. Good. So the years went on, get this. And I saw him make other people, a few other people, initiators who didn't have as much experience as me, nor were as bright as I was. You got it, Toots. Huh? So I didn't say anything, because I was above it all. This went on and on, you know. Every now and then I think, why hasn't he made me an initiator? I'm not going to ask him. I'm above all that. It's in the 80s, 10 years later. I'm in Nepal, up on his ashram that was 12 miles outside Kathmandu on the Chinese road, Silk Road. And you couldn't shower there, but the cooks were very kind. They would make a pail of hot water for you, and they'd bring it to you in the morning, and you could take a sponge bath, which is wonderful at that. We're up at 7,000 feet, perfect height. And I'm taking the bath and, you know, drying off. And the thought comes, why aren't you an initiator? And all of a sudden I kind of look at it outside and says, I don't need that. I'm teaching, I'm enjoying it, who needs that? So I threw it away. The moment I threw it away, guess what voice comes roaring across the ashram? Justy, come here. So I rush. Come. Yes, and what is it? Get ready. Tomorrow I'm making you initiator. I'll get out of here. How do you explain that? Huh? They wait for the right time. I had to let go. Then I got it. Our tradition works that way. They're waiting to give you the gifts, but you have to train for them. You do that by your practice. That's all. That daily, unexciting practice. And then carry it into life. Huh? Appreciate what you see in the city, out in the country. Be so centered, peaceful, and cheerful that people like to be around you. They're drawn to you. They'll trust you. Now you're healing them by your very presence. I'm serious about that. I want to tell you what's troubling them. Okay, just listen, even if you don't know the answer, just listen. That's maybe all they needed to do. Clarification will come in their own minds. Now, when you got initiated, I'm finally back to your question. Some monk in the tradition gets assigned to you by Swamiji, because it comes through him. When someone comes to me and wants to be initiated, I have to check in. Is it all right? And they send a signal to me. And he whispers to me what is the mantra, which ties them in like an electrical current right to the source. Sounds kind of strange in the West, but that's the way it is. Huh? You are protected all the time, 24/7. Call upon them. Mondays and Thursdays are our favorite days. Somehow it's got to do with the cosmos. If you want to start something new, project, If you can, pick a Monday or a Thursday, if you can. You can do it the other days, they'll still help you. But somehow they like that. I don't know the full explanation for it. If you get worried at times, overly concerned, and you wish you weren't, just go to your mantra within. Go right here to your heart. And just rest in that mantra. Don't worry about looking for some answer. No, just stay with that. Do your diaphragmatic breathing, of course. And stay here. Yeah. We want you to be bold in life. This is important. You can't get to enlightenment without being brave. When I met Swamiji, I lived in Chicago, and I was very close to a group of guys that we grew up together in grammar school, high school. We all went to different colleges, and we continued to play touch football and baseball. And some of them got upset that I was involved in yoga. They were a little too harshly Catholic. I said, it doesn't change me, guys. But then they became abusive. And I had too much respect for them to get aggressively violent. They said, if this is the way you're going to treat me, it's over. I washed my hands and I walked away. I was all alone again. About 10 years later, I went back to Chicago and I bumped into a couple of them. It's as if they hadn't moved from 10 years ago. In their attitudes, the way they thought, oh boy. So something was taken, something was given. It happens that way in our tradition. When Swamiji's uncle came to kill him, to get his money, he was about 6 years old. His master and him were out at night, just living in the woods. The master made a nice fire so they could cook a little rice. And the uncle showed up with about 6 thugs on horseback, looking for the kid, because they found out the kid was in the forest somewhere. And here's the Swamiji's master just stoking the fire. He says, "Where's the kid?" I said, "Kid? What kid?" They looked around, Hey, he's not here. Okay, let's get going. The kid was there. Right before they arrived, his master went over to little Swami. He said, "Son, do you trust me?" "Yes." "Okay. I'm going to put you into the fire. You just sit there. Nothing will happen." "Okay." The kid was in the flames. When they left, the master went over, lifted him out. He said, "You will never be harmed by fire. Fire is your friend." Now, expand on that. The more you grow in your practices, the more nature becomes your friend. And it will do what you want. And that's what our tradition's all about. You are meant to be unlimitedly thrilled with existence. The universe is yours and it's infinite. This is what boggles me. What does that mean, infinite? It never ends. There's more and more to discover. You mean it's not, this goes on for 50 years? No, it goes on forever. That I can't quite comprehend because my reason can't get around that one. But it can appreciate it and suspect what's going on. And that's what our tradition's all about with you people. And why are you keeping me from my food? Because I'm a very spiritual person, you know.
It's all food.
So you got it, Nan?
Yeah.
You're protected fully. Don't worry about a thing. Call upon them. I mean that. Any moment of loneliness, you're confused, just call upon them. Ask them to give you some insight. Go here, and then after your meditation, say your mantra a few times, just go quietly inside, say, here's the issue. Speak it out in your mind to them, or even out loud if you're by yourself. And just say, okay, the answer is coming. They will not abandon you or leave you an orphan. You may not always figure out why a certain thing happened. Later you will. So, well, come on, what are we waiting for?